Hello there everyone, my name is Brother Birch. In this video I'm going to be going through the Lesson 6 personal assignment. So I'll be working on my project as an example. I'm doing the portfolio builder. Your project will obviously be very different, but hopefully this video will still help to kind of see what it'll take to go through some of these steps. So I just did pretty much, I guess I've done this, okay? I'll go ahead and push to GitHub and Heroku during this video, and then all I need to do is just submit your links in iLearn. Okay, so let me just walk through what I did over the last little bit in adding put and delete routes to my API. So I already had the documentation up for this put and this delete. They were done in the not yet implemented section, and you can see that in my last video. I hadn't done them yet, but I knew what I wanted. And so I started off in my routes file. These two lines of code weren't here. If you look here, so I haven't committed any code yet. And so you can see, looks like I took out some white space there, and then I added these two rows of code, or these two lines of code. They're going to call the user controller.update user and user controller.delete user. You can see they're both accessing a username, not an ID. And that is what I wanted, just because I'm going to ensure that the username is unique for each one of these. And so my contract stated that I would be using a username for all of these requests and not an ID or some other field. Okay, so that's what changed there. If I go over to the controllers, this is where the bulk of my work took place. This shows a lot of green just because of my error validation. You can see over here, I did have this exports.create function here. And I added just a try block around this entire thing. The reason why I did this is because sometimes there are unknown issues that'll take place. And if there isn't a good way to catch those issues and return an error, then Heroku can actually crash. I've seen this personally just like a week ago, actually. I was working on the front end for the contacts project, and I made some request that wasn't handled properly, and it basically made my backend crash, and I had to look through the Heroku logs to see why that had taken place. I added some try catch blocks to all of my requests, and everything worked out great. So as a rule of thumb now, I'm just going to put a try catch around every single one of my requests that I make. Okay, so that was the first line of defense as far as doing the error checking. Okay, there was some more. I'll go into that here in a little bit. Before I do, let me just show you guys my functions for update user. So this is for our put. So I got a username. Again, this isn't a try block. I'll say, hey, if there isn't a username, we'll say there was an invalid username supplied. We'll return a 400. That was in my contract as well. This right here, I put in the update user and the create user. So I decided that one of the things that I wanted to validate, so this is for the data validation portion of this assignment, one of the pieces of data that I wanted to validate was that the passwords were complex enough, right? Now, in my database, I am storing plain text passwords, which we will change eventually in this project. But for now, it's just in there as plain text. Okay. Well, I found this cool package, and if you look in my package JSON, you can see that there is this JOI package. That's a dependency of this one. Okay, JOI password complexity. And if we look this up, I hadn't used this package before, but there are a number of password complexity packages, and this one you just set rules for your password complexity, min character, max character, how many lowercase characters you need, how many uppercases you need, how many numbers you need, symbols, and so forth. And so I made just a little helper file, and so that's inside of I made a util folder for utilities, and I said, hey, I'm going to require this package. I set my complexity options. I didn't have to do this. I could have left this as null. These are actually the defaults, but I wanted you guys to see how this was being used. And if I ever want to change it now, it'll be really easy to change it, right? I'm exporting this function called password pass. I'll pass in a password to check. we'll go ahead and validate it, and it will return some type of message. I'll show you guys what this looks like here in a couple minutes after I finish walking through this. Okay. Let's see. So let me go back down to our update user. So we'll check the password. If there's an error, I'll send it back as a 400 with the error there. And so this will actually have a nice description of why it failed to update the user. Okay. And I have this exact same logic now with the create user as well. Okay. And then I say, hey, let's find the user by the username, which was just coming in as a query parameter. And then we'll go ahead and set the username. I could have done rec.body because it's in both locations. Set the password, display name, info. Actually, I need to update this. Yeah, I'll show you why I need to update that here in a second. I did change the user.js model. I moved a lot of the things into an info object. And so if you look in my database now, there's a little bit less here at the root, and I made this info object that'll just have things about the profile. Does the user want their profile to be public right now? Do they want to show to employers that they're open to new opportunities? Where's their location, email, phone number? You know, just like generic information. And so really at the root, the only thing I have is a username, the display name, which I could probably put instead of info, password, and then a profile object, which has an experience array, an education array, projects array, skills array, and a references array. Okay. And so I did have to modify this model. I did pretty much the same thing. I made a JSON of what I wanted this to look like with the info thing. And then I went to my browser and I did the JSON to Mongoose schema. And so I had this info there. And I looked here just because I struggle to make this Mongoose schema stuff sometimes. And so this was really helpful for me to just have this get auto-generated so that I could get what I needed. Okay, let's keep going here. So I showed you guys my put or my update user. Okay, and then we just have user.save. If you didn't remember or if you forgot, I am using Mongoose, which is why this looks a little bit different. Like I said, I could take pretty much all this out, but then we just have this user save. If there's an error, I'll return a 500 with that error or a string that says some error occurred while updating the contact. Otherwise, I'll just send a 204, and I don't need to send any updated data with that because the updated data is already where it's being requested, right? If it's from the front end or if it's from a REST client, they already have that data, and so they don't need me to send any data back other than just a message saying that it was successful. Okay, and then we have this delete user. We'll get the username from the query parameters. I'll do a quick check to make sure that we got a username. This whole thing is in a try block just to catch any errors if any of this fails. And then we go user.delete1 where username is equal to our username. If there's an error, we'll go ahead and return that error or some error occurred while deleting the contact. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and just return this res.status 204. This result is just, honestly, I probably don't even need this. It's just saying that it's acknowledged that it was deleted, and it'll show a deleted count of how many was deleted or were deleted. But anyways, I just wanted to show you guys what that would look like if I wanted to send back any data with this delete. Okay, so those are my two routes. If I scroll up a little bit more, like I said, I just added this try catch to all of them. And so for my error validation, I have these try catch or this error handling. I have the try catches, so you'll see in all of my functions now I have multiple places where I'm saying res.status, res.send, or JSON, or I'll like have return statements where I just drop out of a function and be like, hey, if that failed, then let's return this and let's jump out of this function. And so that's just for my error validation or my error handling, okay? And then for my data validation, I only did a little bit for just the username and password, okay? Making sure the password was complex enough and making sure username was there. And that's all I did for the data validation at this point. I imagine that as I continue to build this application, I'll probably add on to that. This profile object is huge. okay? And so with this, I might at some point want to validate this and be like, hey, I don't want more than a billion characters or something in this profile. You know, I might want to limit the number of items that are in it, or I might want to limit the length of certain items in there. Right now, I'm not going to do any of that, but those are things that I might want to keep an eye out for as I build this application. Okay, so I'm going to close this. With that said, let me just head over to our local host. Pretty sure this is still running. Yeah. So I'm going to go to update user, and let's see here. I'm going to just look at my database here. We'll go ahead and just update this Sarah one. I think I have a nice JSON here that I can use for it. Yeah, it's this one. Okay. So I'm just going to show you guys what this looks like if I don't supply a good password. So I'm going to copy this whole thing, and I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say try it out, and I'll supply that username, and then I'll paste my object in here. You can see there's my password, and I'm going to hit execute, and look what happened. So it shows the whole thing that we tried to save in there. It gave me a 400 bad request, and look at this message that was returned. Okay, we have an array of details saying the password should be at least 8 characters long. There should be at least one uppercase letter, at least one number, at least one symbol. Okay, and so this would be returned potentially to a front end, and they could see and display, just loop through this list of details or this array of details and display each one of those items. Okay, if I come back up here and if I change this, I'll just say I'll add a couple of those and a nice special character in there, and I'll say execute, and I'll come down. That all looks good. We got a 204 back, and I should be able to look at MongoDB. There's my old password, and if I just hit refresh right there, we can see there's my new password. Okay. Now my put here is extremely vague, right? If I wanted to add a new job experience, for example, I totally could. Okay, if I just like hit copy and paste there, be like, oh, this person worked for a while as a CEO of an amazing company, and we'll just leave the rest of that the same. Okay, but I am going to copy this whole thing, and if I go back up to update user again and I paste that, okay, now we got a 400. I wonder why we got a 400. Oh, our password's bad. Let me fix our password. Let's try that one. And that looks better. 204. Okay, I should be able to go back to MongoDB. I'll hit refresh. And there's our new password. I can also look at profile and experience, and we have 2 objects in here now. We have the CEO, an amazing company. Now, a lot of the time in larger projects, we'll have multiple puts. We'll have multiple posts. You know, if I wanted to add a new experience item, I'd probably have a post and a put for this experience array, or even individual items inside of this array. And the same thing with education and projects and skills and references. Right now, I don't anticipate having very much data in here. And so given the scope of this project, I'm okay just having a single post, a single put, a single delete. But keep in mind that a lot of larger applications will split that out a lot. And they'll have over a dozen posts and a dozen deletes and a dozen puts. But anyways, with mine, I could just let my front end handle this, where my front end would manage this profile object and modifying these arrays and these objects inside of it, and then saving that whole profile object in one go for a put or a post. Okay, so that was my put. Let me go ahead and collapse this, and let's go ahead and delete someone here. So it looks like the name that needs to be deleted. I'm going to look at my database here, and let's take out this internet user. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to say try it out. By the way, just so you guys know, I used my debugger a lot for this. It was really, really helpful. If I go into my controller right here and I go to delete, I could put a breakpoint right here. My package or my launch.json for this just had like the default for Node. I said, yeah, I want to debug. What do you want to debug? I said add configuration, Node, attach, and I ended up with this, right? And now with this, if I stop my terminal here, I just want to show you guys this because it makes it so much easier. Wow, let's see, oh, let me cancel that. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to say launch program from the debugger. Notice I had to stop my terminal. They're going to try to run on the same port. Okay, but in my controllers, I have that breakpoint set on line 101. And so as soon as I go and try to delete this user, I'll hit execute. This will stop. And so I can be like, oh, was there a username? That looks good. I can walk through this, do whatever I want to do. Usually what I'll do is I'll like put a break on each one of my return statements, okay, for like actually rendering the JSON. And I'll just let that go and I'll see where it lands. I'm like, oh, that's our result. Looks great. Acknowledge that it deleted one. And that looks good. And then so if I go back over here, I'm expecting to see a nice 204. Okay. And then I can also come back over here, hit refresh, and we're down a user. Okay. So anyways, that's really helpful, being able to debug. I didn't need it very much for the delete, but I certainly used it quite a bit for the put, just because I have a lot of data and some things just weren't working out. Okay. Anyways, so yeah. Lastly, so if we look at this, I went through the put and delete, verified MongoDB that they worked. We added data validation and error handling. Be sure to update your API documentation to include these new routes. We were pretty lucky. I think I changed a couple things in here, but my routes were already set up in here. The only thing I had to change was the tags. They had this not yet implemented tag, and in my swagger.json, if we come over there, I'll just go to version control so you can see these changes. Oh, whoops. There we go. So I changed it to localhost 8080 so it would work locally. Changed it to HTTP so it would work locally. And then I also changed the tags on the put to user and the tags on the delete to user, so that instead of showing up in the not yet implemented, they showed up in the user section. Okay. And then as I do these ones, these will move up to the user as well. Okay, so last but not least, let's go ahead and push to GitHub and Heroku. Verify that API docs work on Heroku. So as I push to Heroku, I do not want, let's see here, that change in there. And I don't want this change in there. So I'm just going to fix these. So this will actually work on Heroku. I could just say, I could just not include this when I stage my files for commits, but I do want to add this tag update, okay? So I'm gonna leave this here. As I look at all of my other files, yeah, I want the package lock, yeah, I want the package JSON. I'll go ahead and push the launch.json file out, that's fine. I wanna update that, and the routes, and that. Okay, so I'm going to say finished lesson 6 personal assignment. Okay, and then I'll just say sync changes. All right, it's been a while since I pushed up here. Let me see if I still have a project on Heroku for this. Oh, good. Sometimes I get trigger happy with deleting my projects. So I'm just going to look at our build progress here. Hopefully it'll deploy just fine since we've done this before. But we'll go ahead and give this a sec. Okay, looks like it just finished. I paused it for maybe like 20-30 seconds. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to hit open app. And that's okay. We don't have anything on that page. I do hopefully have something on this page. Good. So that got updated. I see these under user and not under not yet implemented. I just want to check these routes. I just want to make sure that they work still. So I'm going to hit execute on this one, make sure we're getting our data back. That looks good. I will go ahead and, let's see here. I'm going to grab one of our, let's see here. Oh, where'd my stuff go? Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and we'll go ahead and just test our post or our put on here. Okay, so the get worked out just great. We could do a put. Let's go ahead and try it out. I could just put a new username, and so I could say Jenny Anderson, and the string will go ahead. Well, let's try this. If we just say string, will this get rejected? Hey, good. Our password stuff's working. That's awesome. Okay, so let's come back up here. Say string, and 1, 2, 3, 1, and 2, and 3. Hit execute. Okay. 201. That looks good. We can check our database real fast. See if we have Jenny. Great. Okay. That's interesting. That's a bug that I'll have to fix. She doesn't have that info object in there. And if we look at our controller here for user.js, I'll just go up to create. Let's see here. Save then data. So user.save new user rec.body. Yeah, so I'd have to look into that to see why that's not saving. I know I did modify the put though, because that's the one that I was working on today to include that, because that was something that I changed. Okay, but we have all that empty stuff there. I can also say, hey, let's go ahead and create a new user, and I can actually just paste a whole thing in here, and it'll work. So I'll give this a different name. I'll say Johnny, and give him a nice password, and I'll just say Johnny John, and we'll just leave the rest of that the same. We'll delete him here in a sec. Okay, and there's our response. We got a nice 201. I'll hit refresh. We'll look at Johnny John. You can see he has an info object. Okay, so I just have to check that default. When we're just passing in a username and password, we're supplying this, but not the empty info object, which I'm not too worried about right now. Okay, let's go ahead and say get by username. I'll say try it out. Let's go ahead and say Johnny. Hit execute. There's our response body with our Johnny that looks like Sarah, but that's okay. Let's see here. Yeah, so it is Johnny. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and try our put. Okay, so I'm going to say try it out. And we'll say Johnny. And I'll go back over here. Grab Johnny's stuff. And we'll leave that as Johnny. We'll change his password. And maybe he wanted to change his display name to just be John. Okay, and I'll hit execute. Okay, we've got a 204. That is a good sign, but we can go ahead and verify that here as well. And now his display name is just John. That looks great. And let's try to delete Johnny, last but not least, to make sure all this works on Heroku. And hit execute. Got a 204. That's a good sign. And Johnny is gone. Okay, so all of that working up here, that means I am happy and ready to submit this. Okay, so I would just submit this link and then my GitHub link for this repository. Okay, so hopefully this helps with me kind of walking through this. Like I said, I know that your project's going to be a lot different from my project, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to let me know. But I hope that this was helpful. Thanks.